Have you ever stood in your garage, hand resting on cold steel, and wondered what it would have felt like to command the kind of machine that sent echoes down Main Street drag strips at midnight? Back then, horsepower wasn't just a number, it was the growl you felt in your chest, the badge that turned heads at every red light. For some, a Mustang was freedom after the factory whistle. For others, it was their first taste of rebellion before Vietnam changed everything. These weren't just cars, they were rites of passage, chrome-clad declarations of who you were and what you stood for. But among them, a few stood taller, faster, louder. Which Mustangs weren't just powerful, but untamed? Which ones rewrote the rules, got whispered about in garages, or only showed up at night? Today, we're digging into the 5 most powerful Ford Mustangs of the 1960s, a time when men built monsters, and the road never seemed to end. Number 5, 1969. Boss 429 Mustang. You didn't just see a Boss 429 Mustang, you felt it. And not in the usual way. Not like a car that turns heads, more like a chill that runs up your spine. If one rolled past, you didn't stare, you flinched. It looked like trouble. Because it was. Born out of NASCAR's homologation rules, the Boss 429 wasn't built to cruise boulevards or sit pretty at car shows. It was Ford's not-so-secret weapon, a loophole special wrapped in steel and fury. To qualify their new 429 cubic-inch semi-Hemi engine for NASCAR, Ford had to put it into production vehicles. But this wasn't about playing by the rules, it was about bending them until they screamed. So they chose the Mustang, a pony car never meant to hold something that massive, and surgically crammed the engine in. It wasn't easy. Ford had to ship the bodies to Carcraft in Brighton, Michigan, where the inner fenders were cut and shock towers widened just to make room. Air conditioning, gone. Power accessories, stripped. This car had one job, go fast and scare the hell out of anything in the next lane. Rated at 375 horsepower, it was another case of downplaying the truth. Anyone who's driven one, or stood behind it when it fired up, knows it hit well over 500 horsepower in the right hands. And when that semi-Hemi roared to life, it didn't sound like a car, it sounded like a threat. Only 859 were built. It wasn't meant to be common. It wasn't meant to be friendly. The Boss 429 was cold-blooded, brutal, and rare. It was the kind of car that emptied the pit lane when it showed up, made men double-check their belts, and made you wonder if you were man enough to even start it. This wasn't a Mustang for everyone. This was a Mustang for the chosen few. Quiet, ruthless, unapologetically dominant. Number 4, Shelby GT500KR, 428 Cobra jet. They didn't call it King of the Road for nothing. In 1968, a year scarred by protests, political assassinations, and a country at odds with itself, the Shelby GT500KR was pure, untamed American muscle. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't diplomatic, it was loud, defiant, and unapologetically fast, everything the world seemed to be running from. Under the hood sat the now legendary 428 Cobra Jet V8. Ford rated it at a modest 335 horsepower, but that number was a lie, crafted to keep insurance companies off their backs. In reality, this beast pushed out well over 400 horsepower, and anyone who's ever slammed the throttle knows it felt like a punch to the chest. The KR didn't roll off the line, it launched, and when that engine roared to life, the sound was less car and more controlled explosion. The styling wasn't flashy, but it had presence. Long hood, scooped lines, wide stance, it didn't need to shout to get noticed. It had the kind of muscle that spoke for itself. You could feel it, just idling at a stoplight. The low, guttural rumble telling every other driver nearby, don't even try. Carroll Shelby didn't build this car for comfort or status. He built it for war on the track, on the street, and in the hearts of car lovers who wanted more than just transportation. The GT500KR was a Mustang on steroids. A Mustang with something to prove. And it proved it. One burnout, one street race, one high-speed run at a time. In a world full of noise, the GT500KR made a different kind of statement. It didn't whisper, it roared. And decades later, it's still echoing through every garage and memory where the spirit of real American muscle lives on. Number 3, 1965, Shelby GT350R. While other kids were busy gluing shag carpet into the backs of vans and slapping peace signs on their bumpers, Carroll Shelby was in Southern California. building a street-legal weapon in a garage that smelled like race fuel and rebellion. The man wasn't interested in comfort, compromise, or cruising. He had one goal: take Ford's fresh-faced pony car and turn it into something that could humiliate Porsches, Ferraris, and anyone else arrogant enough to doubt American steel. And that's exactly what the 1965 Shelby GT350R became, a machine engineered not just to win races, but to shatter illusions. Shelby ripped out the rear seat, gone. Sound deadening, deleted. Carpets, forget it. Everything not absolutely essential was removed. In its place, raw aluminum panels, racing harnesses, a snarling side exit exhaust, and a 289 cubic inch V8 massaged to the edge of madness. Tuned to over 350 horsepower and crammed into a lightweight shell, the GT350R didn't just accelerate, it attacked. On track, it barked through corners and bit down hard on every straight. There was no grace, no glamour, just grit. Only 36 GT350Rs were ever built. That wasn't by accident. This wasn't a car for casuals or collectors. It was for true believers. The kind of driver who didn't wave to the crowd because he was too focused on the apex. The kind who lived for oil-slicked pit lanes, checkered flags, and the smell of smoking brakes. This wasn't the Mustang you took to prom. This was the one you took to war. And it delivered. The GT350R tore up tracks from Riverside to Daytona, proving that an American car stripped down and tuned up could go toe-to-toe with Europe's best. It didn't need chrome or praise, it needed speed, and someone fearless enough to unleash it. Shelby didn't build the GT350R to sell cars. He built it to make a point. And all these years later, that point still echoes through every racetrack and garage that dares to chase greatness. Number 2. 1969 Mustang Mach 1 428 Super Cobra Jet Drag Pack. To most folks, it looked like just another fastback Mustang. Another Mach 1 parked outside the diner under the flickering neon light. But to those who knew better, to the grease-knuckled kids leaning on the jukebox, and the local legends who made their name a quarter mile at a time, that wasn't just a car. It was a coiled beast, cammed, geared, and waiting for the right fool to tempt fate at a stoplight. The 1969 Mustang Mach 1 428 Super Cobra Jet was a different breed. Not just an options package, this was Ford at its sneakiest, slipping a monster into the hands of anyone crazy enough to handle it. When ordered with the drag pack, it came armed with a remote oil cooler, 3.91 or 430 rear gears, a reinforced drivetrain, and most importantly, a specially tuned 428 Cobra Jet engine that cranked out well over 400 real-world horsepower. On paper, it said 335 because paperwork mattered to insurance companies, but the street didn't care about paper. The street cared about grip, growl, and guts. This wasn't a car for guys who polished chrome. It was for guys who wore their shop rags in their back pockets and smelled like burnt rubber on Friday nights. The man behind the wheel didn't need to rev it at you, just the low idle alone, loping like a chained-up animal, told you everything you needed to know, and when the light turned green, no words, just smoke, just sound, just fear. It wasn't as rare as the Boss 429 or as exotic as a Shelby, but that was the point. It hid in plain sight. A street sleeper with enough bite to bury Camaros and Mopars before they even realized they'd been challenged. It was Ford's street-level hitman, merciless, misunderstood, and absolutely unforgettable. You didn't see it coming. You only saw the taillights and the lesson they left behind. Number 1 1967, Ford Mustang 427, Super Stocker. Most people, even die-hard Ford fans, don't know it existed, and maybe that's exactly how Ford wanted it. No press release, no show car unveilings, no dealer promotions, just whispers, rumors, hushed stories passed around at drag strips and speed shops like urban legends. But for the select few who do know about the 1967 Mustang 427 Super Stocker, it was never just a car. It was a phantom, a thunderbolt, a ghost in Wimbledon white that came out of nowhere, made history in seconds, and disappeared just as fast. This wasn't a car built for the public. It was built for war. Deep inside Ford's clandestine drag racing division, long after the lights went out in the marketing department, engineers were bolting Le Mans-proven 427 V8s, the same kind used in the GT40s that conquered Ferrari, into lightweight 67 Mustang fastbacks. These weren't street cruisers. They weren't even muscle cars by traditional standards. They were precision-crafted weapons designed to dominate NHRA's superstock class. Think oil coolers, reinforced frames, heavy-duty driveline components, everything necessary to survive a full-throttle launch, and live to do it again. No frills, no chrome showmanship, just raw speed hidden behind a blank stare. Some wore no badging at all, no stripes, no scoops, just a Wimbledon white body and the haunting thump of a big block heartbeat underneath. When one of these showed up at Lyons Drag Strip in California or on the back roads of the Midwest, people didn't ask what it was. They asked who built it, because it felt more like a prototype that escaped the lab than something Ford would ever admit to producing. And the truth is, maybe they didn't really want to. The 427 Superstocker wasn't meant to sell units, it was meant to settle scores, to win trophies, to break hearts and crankshafts, and that's exactly what it did. Today, some say a few still exist, hidden in barns, sealed behind garage doors, or traded quietly among collectors who know exactly what they're holding. But even if you've never seen one in person, the legend lives, in whispers, in tire smoke, in those rare nights when the air smells like nitro and something fast comes screaming down the strip with no logos, no mercy and no name. Ford didn't just make muscle cars, sometimes they made monsters. So tell me, if you could fire one of these legends up, just one more time, hear that engine echo off the walls, and feel your pulse rise with every gear, which one would it be? These weren't just machines, they were markers of a moment, roaring proof that steel, sweat and soul once ruled the road. Maybe you drove one, maybe you lost to one, maybe you're still chasing the sound of that perfect downshift. Drop your favorite Mustang in the comments and don't hold back on the stories. Because this community, it's built on chrome, memory, and men who still feel the fire every time they see those taillights disappear into the night. And hey, if this video stirred something in you, like a long-lost engine finally turning over, hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up for the next ride. Until next time, keep chasing the dream, because some legends aren't meant to stay parked,